Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to NEWSROOM. I'm your host, Khalid. Today is Monday, the 27th of December 2021. The last week of this year begins and we have lots to discuss with you, lots to share with you. We'll begin with our first story. Our first story concerns India and the extrajudicial killings that have been going on without any rest in our not so friendly neighbor. In this latest spate, there have been 6 extrajudicial killings in the last 3 days. There have been 4 such attempts, 4 encounters in which 6 so-called militants have been killed in what the Indians call extrajudicial killings. This is a spate of killings that are used mainly by the Indian forces to eliminate all such elements that talk against the government or that talk for the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir for their right to self-determination. This is going to be our first segment. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, of the day concerns corporal punishment. Now, this is something that we've all gone through as kids. Nevertheless, the Federal Directorate of Education has now directed the heads of all institutions, whether it be private or public, to be vigilant against corporal punishment, as a stringent law in this regard has been passed by the Parliament and has been vilified and has been, of course, signed and put into order by our President as well. This is going to be our second story of the day. Our third story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns Archbishop Desmond Tutu, Nobel Peace Laureate and veteran of South Africa's struggle against the white minority rule, who passed away at the age of 90 on Sunday. This was announced by the presidency. He was not only a wonderful, wonderful human being, but somebody who worked for the humanity in general, who not only worked for the apartheid in South Africa and elsewhere, but also worked for the Palestinians and their due rights. He is a person that will solely be missed. His is a void that cannot be filled. Then we'll be talking about Israel, who on Sunday have unveiled a plan to spend more than $300 million to double the Jewish settler population in the Golan Heights. Now, this has happened 40 years after it annexed this territory that was captured from Syria. And of course, this is also one of the issues of tension with Syria and between Syria and Israel. What will all of this lead to? This is going to be our fourth story. Our last story of the day concerns the CDA and the city managers that have decided to acquire drone cameras for monitoring wildlife and forests. You know that the government of today is extremely vigilant as far as the climate change is concerned, as far as clean and green Pakistan is concerned. These are different initiatives by our government as well. And so this is just an extension of that program to take extreme care of the wildlife of the forests so that no untoward incident can happen. And the drones will now be used by the CDA in this context. Let's begin with our first story, ladies and gentlemen, and that first story concerns the extrajudicial killings that have been happening in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. In this last incident, over a period of 3 days, there have been 6 extrajudicial killings over 4 encounters. More in the following report.
The ongoing pattern of serious human rights abuses in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir poses serious question upon conscience of international community. Arbitrary detention, extrajudicial killings, enforced disappearances, rape, torture and ill treatment committed against unarmed civilians represent the hallmark of draconian Indian occupation. In its bid to crush the indigenous youth-led uprising against Indian occupation by brute force, Indian forces persist in their killing spree. In the latest bloody saga, 6 Kashmiris have been killed in 4 encounters in the last 3 days by Indian security forces in South Kashmir. Issuing a strong condemnation to Indian atrocities, Foreign Office spokesperson Asim Iftikhar Ahmed noted that the occupying army had intensified arbitrary detentions, night raids, coercion, harassment and humiliation of Kashmiris. After crushing Kashmir's already vulnerable civil and political society along with continuing digital apartheid of Kashmiris, Indian government is now committing unabated state terrorism. The evil designs of Indian government, from murdered youth to raped women in the occupied valley, could never break the will of the heroic Kashmiri people who are resolutely standing for their inalienable right to self-determination as enshrined in the relevant UN Security Council resolutions. International community must shun its double standards about human rights abuses and hold India accountable for its grave and systematic violations of human rights and international humanitarian law by imposing sanctions and other punitive measures.
Now, to further elaborate on this very important topic, we've been joined by two guests, one in the studio and one online. In the studios, we've been joined by Brigadier retired Tariq Zaman Saab. He's a senior analyst. Brigadier Saab, thank you very much to have joined us. And online, we've been joined by Lieutenant General retired Raza Muhammad Khan Saab. He's a defense analyst. Sir, thank you very much to have joined us online as well. Let's begin with you, Tariq Zaman Saab. Extrajudicial killings, nothing new for India, but it is something that is continuing unabated without any pressure whatsoever from the West or any human rights organization. There have been reports by these organizations, but no tangible action. Why is that so?
Umar, first of all, I would like to tell you that it's not only the extrajudicial killing, because the human rights violations by the Indians in the occupied Kashmir includes even enforced disappearances,
of course,
rapes, torture, and all that. But extrajudicial killing is at the top, because you just see within the last 3 days, 6 innocent Kashmiris have been killed. And within the month of December, total 18 have been killed. And now, if you see the reports of United Nations Higher Commissioner for Human Rights in 2019, they have condemned. In 2018, they have given reports that these violations and extrajudicial killing is taking place over there. And then most recently, on 6th of July, 2021, again a report has been given. My point is that these reports, it's okay. Why don't you give recommendations? Because that is Higher Commissioner for Human Rights. If they give the recommendations, well, this is being violated over there. Innocent people are being killed over there. Why don't they make a recommendation that some sanctions should be imposed on India? Let me tell you that if same thing happens in any other country where non-Muslims, other communities are involved, I tell you that entire world community, international community would run over there. Take the example of East Timor and many other examples.
Of course.
Why
there are so many examples that need to be put into place and put into perspective as far as what is happening in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Raza Khan Saab, so many reports, as Brigadier Saab also talked about, and but no recommendations, no actions. And we in Pakistan also have submitted so many reports, the last being in September, the 132-page dossier on the Indian war crimes in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Why is there a blind eye that is being placed by the West? Why do they turn a blind eye on all of this that is happening in India? And there is so much that is happening in India, in fact, as we speak.
I think you are right that whatever our expectations are, whatever the expectations of the people of Kashmir are, they are not being met. And this is unfortunate. And I think we Pakistanis, as well as the entire Kashmiri diaspora, they need to increase the awareness about the seriousness of this situation. It is not only a violation of human rights. It is a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It is a violation of the Geneva Conventions. They are committing crimes against humanity. They are committing war crimes in Kashmir. And therefore, I think the emphasis and the focus of Pakistan and the people of Kashmir, I'm talking now of the Kashmiri diaspora abroad, should be on increasing awareness about that. Also increasing awareness about the problem itself, that this is no more a domestic issue of India. It is an international issue among 3 nuclear powers, with Kashmiris a very important party of the same. And the solution of the problem is not only the interest of peace in the region, but it is also in the interest of India itself. Because so far, in the last 50 years, India has spent close to $1 trillion in keeping Kashmir And as we are all aware, they are not interested, in the people of Kashmir. They're only interested in keeping the real estate. And the people of Kashmir know about that. And therefore, they are totally alienated. I'm sure you must have heard the interview of Dr. Farooq Abdullah given to Karan Thapar only 2 days back. And there, he very clearly stated that no Kashmiris want to now live under the Indian domination, and they don't want to be slaves. And he declared it that across the political divide in Kashmir, where there are presently 10 political parties, no one has accepted, the abrogation of Article 370.
You remember, Lieutenant General Saab, that Farooq Abdullah as well as Mehbooba Mufti and other leaders met with Narendra Modi a couple of months back, where he tried to kind of cajole them to come in line as per his principles as to what he wanted to achieve in Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, and no tangible result of course came out of that. But seeing what is happening politically also, and of course here we are concentrating on the extrajudicial killings, the saffron terrorism in India, of which this is just one part, has that become the new norm in India?
Absolutely. And I think the reason behind that is that they are getting votes because of that. It is that Chanakya doctrine of divide and rule. And in this case also, hatred of all Indian Muslims, all minorities, particularly Muslims and Kashmiris. And they are doing this, for their short-sighted political gains. And for that, even the Indian armed forces, they have been politicized. The judiciary, the Indian judiciary, is also very compliant. And the biggest example of that is that although these Article 370 and 315, they have been raised, they have been challenged in the Indian Supreme Court, and many years have passed, but no decision is being given there. Now the issue of delimitation is there. They are now trying to increase the seats in Jammu as against in the valley, in Srinagar. And that is another attempt, now to change the entire politics of Kashmir. Again, the issue of restoration of statehood and new elections there is being discussed. But I think Kashmiris are united that they want the statehood first, and that they will decide later on whether to participate in the elections or not. And you also saw only 2 months back, in the district level elections, that the BJP was defeated there, and whatever alliance was there of the Kashmiris, they won. So the results are in front of them. And I think,
but despite that, this is what they want to do. They want to rule by power. They want to rule by fear. They want to rule by aggression and violence. And this is what they feel is the attitude that has made them popular amongst the Indian public as well as the Indian diaspora. Nevertheless, this is a huge impediment. There is a huge dent as far as human rights are concerned across the world, and it's so sad to see that we aren't seeing any action that is happening. I'll come back to you, Lieutenant General Saab, but I have to go to the studios again. Tariq, Zaman Saab, Indian human rights abuses is also something that is nothing new. The United Nations Human Rights Commission, you've pointed out very ably, has taken out various reports on that. Pakistan has taken various reports on that. Amnesty has taken reports on that.
That's right.
Amnesty, in fact, is no longer allowed. Nevertheless, there are other human rights organizations that have published huge reports on that. What do you feel needs to be done in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir within the region by its populace, in your point of view?
Well, you see that if you just see the role of present government, because most recently, just on Sunday, they've given a very bold and blunt statement. They're doing it. They're, as far as our foreign ministry is concerned, they are taking all out measures, and I think for the first time in the history I've seen, that this government is going all out as far as your diplomatic pressure and the efforts.
Or are you talking of Pakistan?
But you are taking the international community along as well. The most recently, it's a good news that British Parliament, they have taken a serious note of these violations and
they have written a letter.
Yes, 28 members, they have written a letter to Indian High Commissioner that stop this nonsense and more so just explain, give us the explanation. That's a very good achievement, I must say, on the part of this government as well. But the thing is that India should understand that no amount of force or oppression can, curb or stop the effort of these innocent Kashmiris for the to the self of their to the right of their self-determination. They are just making all-out effort. But the thing is that international community must come forward. If you think that this solution could be achieved by force or through war between the two nuclear powers, I think that is out of question now, because no power in the world would allow to go these two nuclear powers at a nuclear standoff. That might have not been possible. But the thing is that diplomatic means is first and foremost solution. And secondly, the efforts of those people, they are unprecedented. Those are unprecedented. They are doing it. Kashmiri people are doing it. But you see another brutal act. I must say it's a most brutal act. Since April 2020, all those whom they are killing, their remains or their dead bodies are not being given back to their relatives, families, and they are disposing those off or maybe burying elsewhere at an unknown place. Why doesn't international community take a note?
I mean, there's that and so many other questions, Brigadier Saab, that needs to be answered by the international community and by the international human rights organizations that are extremely important to the world. Last question to you, Lieutenant General Saab. There was a Russell tribunal that talked about genocide, settler colonialism, and Kashmir and in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. They have taken testimonies, and it's a very important tribunal that was put together in order to gauge human rights abuses in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. This plus the 28, of course, British parliamentarians who've written a letter, plus the EU that has also made efforts, plus the OIC's efforts in that regard. What is more important in this day and age now? The efforts are being made, but India doesn't seem to budge an inch as far as its human rights abuses are concerned. What needs to be done for them to move in the right direction?
I think, the OICs there are influential OIC members, I think, which Pakistan is directly, they're being briefed on what is happening there. Unfortunately, there hasn't been an OIC ministerial conference on Kashmir, like the one we just had on Afghanistan. I think that is needed, and we should continue our efforts for that. But in addition to that, I think the key lies in the making public opinion in the United States and in the EU countries, and that public opinion can only be made through, I think, writings and also by interaction with their academia and by interaction with their politicians, inviting them to Pakistan and meeting them there to increase their awareness and to warn them of the consequences of if this issue is not resolved. So I think put together all these measures, they need to continue. And in that, I think it is also a big obligation of the Indian people and the Indian media and the Indian opposition to realize that whatever is happening in Kashmir is not in the interest of the Indian people or the Indian Union. And the earlier they reverse the present policy, the better it would be for them and for the rest of the world.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General Raza Khan Saab, defense analyst, joining us online to talk about this very important issue. Thank you very much, sir. And finally, coming to you, Brigadier Retired Tariq Zaman Saab. Lieutenant General Saab has pointed out some of the efforts that need to be taken within India and outside of India. What would you like to add to that? Pakistan has been striving to help the people of Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir diplomatically, politically, and morally. What more can Pakistan do in your point of view?
You see, the international community, they most of them, because I've seen, I'm quite active on the social media as well, Twitter and all that. Luckily, there has been a shift now, because previously India was making a propaganda, they were making all out efforts just to shelve it and just keep it down at a low tone. But now I have seen that even on the social media, people are showing, and especially you have seen it, shown it in the beginning as well, what all brutality, what all barbarism is being shown by them, that is being shown to the international community. And let me tell you that now international community and the public at large, they are now fully cognizant of the fact that India is doing gross violation of human rights over there, killings and all that. So one more thing I would suggest is that we should all be all out, just to go onto the social media, make it public, show the real face of the India to the world. That would
so
be,
what you mean to say is that it's the people power that will
people
change.
power will certainly play. And within the India, I tell you that on the social media, because a lot of spaces we have been conducting on the social media, on the Twitter as well, Indian people and Hindus even have been coming there on those spaces, and they have been condemning the brutality of Indians, army and security forces in Kashmir. And they said that now we are fed up, better you just take it.
Let's hope
so that public awareness within the India, as told by General Sahab, that would also pay. And OIC, most recently we have conducted, after 41 years, a good step that a conference has been conducted over here. I think that OIC and all these diplomatic pressure would play.
All right, will play a very important role in order for India to change its perspective as far as human rights abuses within within its country and in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Thank you very much, Brigadier Retired Tariq Zaman Sahab, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this very important topic, that is extrajudicial killings and saffron terrorism that have been going on in India and in illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir. Let's go to our second topic, ladies and gentlemen, and our second story of the day concerns corporal punishment. Now, this is something a lot of people, myself included, have gone through. We have all witnessed firsthand what corporal punishment feels like in primary school, in secondary school as well. A lot of it has been going on across the world, not just in Pakistan, but in this region as well. But now a change is coming, because the Federal Directorate of Education has now directed the heads of all institutions to be vigilant against corporal punishment, as a stringent law in this regard has now been passed by the Parliament and has come into force in the capital, because it has been signed into law by the President of Pakistan, Dr. Arif Alvi. Now, under this new law, teachers who are found involved in corporal punishment could face compulsory retirement and dismissal from service. Now, the Federal Directorate is an institution, an organization that regulates 423 educational institutions in the capital, and this is what it has directed through a letter dated December 22nd. Barrister Safi Ghauri Sahab, who is of course a regular guest on our shows and talks regularly about issues that confront the society, joins us online. Barrister Sahab, thank you very much to have joined us. Barrister, what do you make of this law on corporal punishment that has been put into place and now has been put into effect by the letter signing by the President of Pakistan and in the federal capital? How long will it take to have an effect on the public and private institutions?
Thank you so much for having me, Omar. It's an absolute pleasure being here every single time. I feel that this law is extremely important, because if we were to look at the beginning of this law comes from the Convention on the Rights of Children, which is a treaty that was signed by the United Nations. And this treaty is particularly important in the history of all international law, because this is the singular most signed treaty in the world. No other treaty has been signed as much as this singular treaty has been. And this treaty that speaks about the rights of children clearly states in Article 19 that corporal punishment is something that no state shall allow and other forms of humiliating and degrading punishments. So when Pakistan finally completed its long lost obligation under the CRC this February in 2021, and now that it has implemented this, I feel that it has completed a long overdue obligation, and children deserve this dignity. They deserve to be treated as humans, and they deserve the same kind of respect and the same kind of protection in the law that adults do, because an adult would not be hit by anyone under the Pakistan Penal Code. So why should there not be a law specifically ensuring that a child is not hurt under the guise of corporal punishment or whatever have you?
Safi, I'd like to point you in another direction. When I was a kid, I did a debate. I was in 3rd or 4th grade. It was called Spare the Rod and Spoil the Child. It was an inter-school debate and I won first prize in it. At that time, I didn't understand what the whole concept of spare the rod and spoil the child meant. Do you feel that children and adults in this day, now in the 21st century, understand this whole concept or are working against it? What are the rules that go in favor of it? How should parents and teachers deal as far as children are concerned so as to not inculcate violence or aggression in their, of course, the way they treat the youth, whether it be children or their students?
This is a fantastic question. This is absolutely fantastic. So this raises a couple of questions. I think the first question that we need to focus on when we talk about spare the rod and spoil the child, and I would also be curious to know that you won the debate, but what side of the debate were you on? Were you did you want the child to be
the show, Safi?
But regardless, before we sort of continue on with this debate, the first thing that we need to understand is that children are not properties. For the longest time, it has been believed that the parents own children. Although the parents have a responsibility of bringing children up, they do not own them as they would own chattel, or they would own maybe like a sofa or table, which they could do whatever they want with. They are individual humans. And to understand that children as little individual humans have rights is something that is going to take quite a leap of faith. Because in our culture, and I applaud you for being brave when you said that a lot of us have been through it. The problem here, Omar, is it's not legal as much as it is psychological. The fact that many people who go through it then internalize that punishment and feel that this punishment ought to be passed on because they give this strange rationale that, oh, we turned out all right. Unfortunately, there is no way of knowing what way any one of us or whoever it is would have turned out had they not undergone any corporal punishment. And so we can only presume that because it hurts physically and because it hurts mentally, whatever effects it had must have been negative. And so I feel now is high time that we started experimenting with giving children the dignity that they should have as individual humans.
All right, Safi, also isn't corporal punishment a kind of pressure tactic in order to build that place for the teacher in the heart of the student one way or the other? This is what a lot of teachers feel, that through corporal punishment they will make the students feel that they need to respect that teacher. Why does corporal punishment equal respect in a lot of educational institutions?
I think because teachers, I don't blame the teachers particularly either, because I feel the teachers don't know what's happening. The teachers are teaching the students as they were themselves taught. It's very unfortunate. This is a vicious cycle that goes on. A teacher teaches a student through violence. The student themselves goes on to become a teacher. They then teach other students through violence. The cycle doesn't end because there's a perpetual belief that this is in their interest, that this is how it could be done, and if not disciplined, then they would go on to become rotten, spoiled children who would have absolutely no idea about what to do. And so this is precisely why this is an important debate. This is why we feel like the state has, by taking such a step, taken a massive step forward, because this is challenging a belief that sits at the very core of our minds, where almost all of us believe that.
All right, Safi, kindly stay online with us. We've also been joined by Nasira Iqbal Sahaba. She's a legal expert. Ma'am, thank you very much to have joined us on this very important segment on corporal punishment. When you go through the law that, of course, has been put against corporal punishment, how much of that is applicable in the real sense in your point of view? And do you feel that the punishments that have been put into place on those teachers or professors who will exercise corporal punishment, do you feel that is enough or more needs to be done?
Frankly, thank you very much for including me in your program, and I think that these should be adequate if they are put into effect. And basically, after the amendment of Article 25 of the Constitution by adding Article 25A, compulsory and free education for children from the age of 5 to 16, it has become essential to ensure that all public and private schools do not use any means of corporal punishment on the children. And we have had examples where corporal punishment has taken place, causing all kinds of mental and physical trauma to little children in the school, and this has to be very carefully watched. And in fact, all the legislation which is done in the provinces also has included this particular factor, that corporal punishment is not to be countenanced at all. And I'm very glad that it has been put in force in the Capital Territory with effect from 30th or 29th December. And it should go a long way in ensuring that children are cared for properly and educated properly all over Pakistan.
All right, ma'am. Also, this has been put into place for the public and the private institutions as well. Although they come under one federal directorate, but nevertheless, there are two different sides that are running in parallel. Which will be more easier to be for these laws to be applicable towards in the private sector or in the public sector at first? Which is more easier in your point of view, or are both of them easily applicable in both these circuits?
Monitoring is done. It should be effectively possible and easy to control everywhere. There are inspectors of schools, and here we have in fact the Federal Department of Education who is going to watch, and I think it should not be difficult, and the punishments are appropriate, that if they do minor aberrations, then their censorship or their withholding of their promotions and increments or financial advancements, or withholding their salaries also. And if it is a major aberration, then of course they could be made to be compulsorily retired, dismissed, and I think it is of no consequence whether it's a private institution or it's a public institution which is already controlled by the government. They should be in place everywhere. All right. Children needed to be treated with fairness, with dignity, and we have already signed the International Covenant on the Rights of the Child, and this is part of the covenant, I think Article 19 of the covenant, that no corporal punishment is to be undertaken against any child. Also, we have cases where parents sometimes undertake this, and in those cases also now we have these child protection bureaus, and if there is a report from neighbors or others that this kind of thing is happening with minor domestic servants or with even one's own children, I think the state can definitely interfere and take notice. Worldwide, it is now something that can be regulated, and
now it is now being regulated in Pakistan as well. Thank you very much, Nasira Iqbal Sahaba, to have given us the time and to have talked to us in detail of the legal aspect of this laws against corporal punishment. Coming back to you, Safiullah Khan Ghauri Sahab, when we look at the penalties, this includes censuring, withholding for a specific period, promotion or increment or financial advancement in accordance with the rules, stoppage from promotion. Under major penalties, a teacher found guilty could face demotion to a lower post or time scale called compulsory retirement, removal, dismissal from service. Is this enough or more needs to be done?
So if you were to look at the original act that was passed in 2021, that original act made it a crime, and that crime was punishable by 1 year of jail sentence, and on top of that there was also a fine of rupees 50,000 as per section 4 of the Prohibition of Corporal Punishment Act that was passed in the ICT. And I believe that whereas this is a step in the right direction, I do believe that there should be service censures when it comes to teachers who are doing it, but they should also, depending on the kind of corporal punishment that has been carried out, they should also be looking into the criminal aspects of carrying out such a crime. Because once again, I reiterate that when we talk about corporal punishment, hitting a child, spanking a child in any manner, We should be looking at a child as an individual, and the rules of the Pakistan Penal Code as they apply to grown-ups should be applicable to children, and in the same manner that if I were to hit you, in the same manner any teacher should be suffering the same legal consequences. And so for
now,
that,
Safi, you talked about hitting. When you look at what the Act incorporates as far as what do you include in corporal acts, this includes, of course, hitting, smacking, slapping, spanking a child with the hand, with an implement, with a whip, a stick, a belt, a shoe, kicking, shaking, throwing a child, scratching, pinching, biting, pulling hair or boxing ears, forcing a child to stay in uncomfortable positions, burning, scalding or forced ingestion, washing a child's mouth out of soap, forcing him to swallow hot species, including mental abuse. This is a lot of important things that have been now made part of this law. Will the teachers be made to understand that? Will certain trainings be given to the teachers as to what is incorporated in this law?
I don't believe that I have read anything that suggests that teachers would be undergoing any specialized trainings, but I do feel that because of this notification, schools would themselves feel the need to start incorporating these regulations within themselves. Secondly, I do also think that we would need several examples before this becomes prevalent. As is the case with almost all laws, you need one or two cases that become virulent amongst the people before people start understanding what the consequences of certain actions are. And so this is particularly important, Omar, because I feel like if we were to sort of step back and think about a law that was passed in the ICT some time ago about the banning of plastic bags, not paper bags, just plastic bags. And I remember a time just about 1 or 2 years ago when plastic bags were practically finished. But then the punishment stopped, and because the punishment stopped, plastic bags started coming back, and now they're used all over the capital territory in every shop once again. And so this is the case with corporal punishment as well. We need proper implementation of these laws. We need teachers to be demoted. We need teachers to be sacked whenever they do such things. We need them to undergo compulsory retirement so that they will create examples for other teachers to follow, and only then will we actually start seeing some real effects of this law and the well-being of children.
Thank you very much, Safiullah Khan Ghauri, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this very important law on corporal punishment. I think it's very, very important for a country, a society like ours to also understand what corporal punishment is and how it needs to be avoided for a child to be psychologically and physically stable, and of course be a normal human being, because a lot of people don't understand. Maybe in the past it used to happen, but now there are a lot of laws that govern a child's rights as well, and this is just part of that. And Pakistan is just one of the many countries that are now implementing these laws on corporal punishment, and we hope that this is implemented in letter and spirit, and we hope that the teachers understand the whole concept of what it entails. Let's come very quickly now to our last stories, ladies and gentlemen. The first is, of course, the South African anti-apartheid campaigner, Archbishop Tutu, Desmond Tutu, has passed away aged 90. He was a Nobel Peace Prize laureate, veteran of South Africa's struggle against white minority rule. He passed away on Sunday at the age of 90. This was announced by the presidency. And of course, in 1984, he won this Nobel Peace Prize for his non-violent opposition to apartheid. His work as far as against apartheid is exemplary. He has not only been side to side with all the other leaders that have worked towards that, but also has worked on many important international issues such as that of Palestine. A lot of Palestinian leaders have also hailed his work and mourned the loss of Desmond Tutu for the man that he was, the principled man that he was, the work that he did. Despite the opposition that he got, he worked diligently against what we know as apartheid, and it is due to his efforts and the efforts of leaders such as him that the world is now clear of, at least to a large extent, of what we know as apartheid. And also we hope that all the work that he put forward as far as the Palestinian cause is concerned will also be implemented in letter and spirit, and we hope to see that also happen. Then, ladies and gentlemen, we were talking about Palestinians and how Desmond Tutu has worked for the rights of the Palestinians. But when we see what is happening in Israel, and this is my next story, Israel on Sunday has unveiled a plan to spend more than $300 million to double the Jewish settler population in the Golan Heights. Now, 40 years back, Israel took this area which is known as Golan Heights from Syria. Around 25,000 Israeli settlers live in these Golan Heights, along with some 23,000 Druze as well. Now, Israel annexed this territory on the 14th of December 1981 in a move that is not recognized by a lot of international community, but nevertheless former US President Donald Trump had granted US recognition to Israeli sovereignty over the Golan in the year 2019. Anthony Blinken has talked about it to revisit that, but let's see if that happens or not. Israel and Syria, which are still technically at war, are separated by a de facto border at the same Golan Heights. A vote on this plan to extend is still expected, but let's see what happens, because the cabinet approval is required for this to be put into law. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, let's come to Islamabad and the CDA, and how the CDA is now acquiring drones to monitor wildlife and forests. We know that Clean and Green Pakistan is one of the major initiatives of this government, and of course we need to tackle what we know as climate change, and thus wildlife and forestry play a huge part in that. Now, the CDA wants to control all that is forestry and wildlife through the use of drones, so that they can understand if there is something that happens. Sometimes you cannot ascertain whether there is a fire inside a forest at some point, and so this is where these drones will help. They will be able to curtail the fire, they will be able to inform the necessary people in the right time, and thus the action could be taken. This has been put into this will be implemented as a test example, but of course later let's hope that this is implemented over the entire Pakistani region as well. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories and segments. Take care of yourselves, get yourselves vaccinated if you haven't, and follow the SOPs. Allah Hafiz.